When Milo went back upstairs and picked up the book, he thought Dr. Silverfish looked extremely sly. It was almost as though he was going to say something he knew Milo wouldn't want to hear. Milo opened the book and began reading. Day 3. Take the last step to perfection. I'll bet that tasted good. And to top it off, you're more nearly perfect than ever. Perfect people do not eat very often. Eating gives you too many chances to dribble ketchup down your chin. Now, it's a well-known fact that there is nothing more difficult than going without food for an entire day. You did it. This proves you can do something just because you want to, which is what we experts call willpower. Some inferior minds call it stick-to-itiveness. Not me, but you've proven that even if you think something's nearly impossible, like learning Finnish or becoming a classical kazoo player or building a model of the Eiffel Tower out of chewing gum, you'll be able to stick to it and get it done if you really want to. This is a very important lesson on the road to perfection. After today's lesson, your final assignment should be a snap. Ready? Milo remembered Dr. Silverfish's sly look. He had that feeling something unpleasant was coming. He read on. Right now, you are thinking that I'm going to ask you to do something horribly difficult, something you have never done before, something you won't possibly be able to do even if you try your hardest. Well, you're wrong. All I want you to do is go to the nearest zoo and bring home a fully grown gorilla. Milo's jaw dropped. He couldn't believe it. He turned the page. Just kidding. We doctors enjoy our little jokes once in a while. If you went out and brought home a gorilla because you didn't keep on reading, I apologize to the gorilla. He's stuck with a dummy like you. You get no apology because you were stupid. What do gorillas have to do with being perfect anyhow? Broccoli is another story. Now you are wondering if I will ever get to the point and tell you what to do on your last day of my perfection course. Well, the answer is no. I won't tell you to do anything because what I want you to do is nothing. That's pretty simple, isn't it? Don't eat, don't sleep, don't watch TV, don't listen to music, don't read, don't crochet, don't play cards, don't snap your fingers, don't pick your nose, don't even whistle. Don't do a single thing for the next 24 hours. Think, relax, be like broccoli. See you tomorrow. By then, you'll be perfect. P.S. I realize it's hard to start doing nothing at all at once. You may warm up by practicing doing nothing for 10 minutes. The 24 hours will begin right after that. P.P.S. It's okay to go to the bathroom and sip weak tea slowly and breathe. Everything else is a no-no. Well, it sounded dumb, but it sounded simple enough. The hardest part would be not eating, but Milo knew he'd be able to handle that. The only problem was that tomorrow was Saturday, the day of Milo's weekly baseball game. He always played right field because he wasn't very good at baseball, but he liked it anyway. Mostly what he did in right field was stand around. For a minute he wondered if Dr. Silverfish would consider playing right field to be doing nothing, since it usually came pretty close. But Milo realized if a ball came near him, he'd either have to let it go by or ruin all his plans for perfection. It would also be pretty silly to go up to the plate and not even take a swing. And just going up to bat was doing something, really. He decided he would just have to skip baseball this week. Suddenly, Milo noticed he was absent-mindedly tapping his fingers on his desk. He stopped mid-tap. He'd have to watch that sort of thing. Tapping your fingers was doing something, even if it wasn't doing much. Luckily, the warm-up period wasn't over yet. Milo began thinking about the best way to do nothing. Then his father came in. Mr. Crinkly handed Milo a plastic cup and a big glass jar full of a brown fluid. "What's this?" Milo asked. "Weak tea," said Mr. Crinkly. "Thought you might need it." "You're only supposed to read this book a little at a time," Milo scolded. He must have read the whole thing at once before dinner. Pretty near, his father admitted. Never said I was perfect. Anyhow, I made a do not disturb sign for your door. I'll tell Mom and Alyssa you're not to be bothered. See you tomorrow night. Good luck. Thanks, Dad. Milo's father left the room. Milo opened the tea jar, took a sniff, made a face, and set the jar on the floor. Now there was nothing to do but think, relax, and vegetate. The idea of not sleeping was the part Milo liked best. He would have to stay up all night, something he had never done before. It would probably be more fun if he could listen to the radio, but Dr. Silverfish had specifically vetoed that. Milo started thinking about how wonderful it would be to be perfect. He wouldn't have to bother going to school anymore. What could anybody teach a perfect person? Maybe he could become a major leaguer, the world's best pitcher. He'd throw only perfect games. He was so close now. If only he could hang on for one more day, he would be the only perfect person he had ever met. After about a half an hour, he couldn't think of much more to think about. When it came to perfection, he was all thought out. He tried thinking about Dr. Silverfish, but he had already thought about him as much as he wanted to. He listened to the sounds of traffic on the street. It was sort of interesting trying to sort out the cars from the motorcycles and trucks for a while. Then the traffic noises died down and got boring. He listened to his stomach digest his dinner, but after churning and gurgling for a few minutes, it developed laryngitis and hushed to a whisper. A few sips of tea helped his stomach regain its voice, but it tended to repeat itself the second time around. There had to be other things to do, Milo thought. Then he remembered that doing things was exactly what he wasn't supposed to be doing. He tried to pick out pictures in the shadows on his wall. The only one he could find looked like his grumpy math teacher. He tried listening again. The TV was on downstairs, but he couldn't hear it clearly, and he thought he might be cheating if he could. Somebody was going to the bathroom down the hall. Milo glanced at his watch. It was only 10. He had a whole night of nothing to look forward to, followed by a very long and nothing day. He tried to think of something else to think of, but it was no use. He stared at his watch. It seemed to be running even slower than it had when he was waiting for dinner. He began to get drowsy. He wished he could read or play solitaire or build a model plane or something. He began to wonder if he'd ever be perfect at all. Then he remembered a book he'd read about an old Indian custom. To become a man, a boy went into the forest naked on the coldest night of the year and had to come back the next morning with an eagle feather. Maybe it was a condor feather, something like that. Milo decided if people could do those things, he could certainly do nothing long enough to become perfect. Milo heard his sister go to bed, and then his parents. He realized he was probably the only one awake in the whole house. At 3 minutes after midnight, he heard an airplane go by way off in the distance. At 18 minutes to 1, a car horn tooted outside and a dog barked back. Then it was absolutely silent and still. At 2 something, he wasn't quite sure when, Milo's eyelids fell shut. He snapped them open again just as he was about to fall asleep. But as the night like early morning wore on, those eyelids kept getting heavier and heavier. Milo thought about standing up and jumping around, but he didn't, because that would be doing something. Eventually, he got up and went to the bathroom, mostly to keep himself awake. He came back and sat down again. A moment later, he saw his room fill up with light so white and brilliant he could hardly bear to look at it. As his eyes adjusted, he began to see people sitting in front of him. It was like being in an enormous auditorium with seats stretching as far as he could see. The people in the seats didn't move a muscle. They didn't make a sound. They were doing absolutely nothing, just like Milo. From where he sat, all Milo could see were the backs of heads. He wanted to get up and walk around to find out what the people looked like, but he knew that would be doing something. He stayed put. Then he realized people were sitting behind and beside him. To look at them, he only had to turn his head. His head wouldn't move. He couldn't even shift his eyes. That would be doing something. Then he noticed the person in front of him raise a glass to his lips. Milo would have had to lean forward to see the person's face, but he didn't have to do anything at all to see what was in the glass. It looked exactly like weak tea. It was as though a sign had dropped in front of Milo's nose. These must be perfect people, he said to himself. Maybe I'm one of them already. Maybe time went by so fast I didn't notice. Milo took a sip of his own tea and tried to be as perfect as he knew how. Since he wasn't able to move except to sip his tea, all he could do was watch the back of the neck of the person in front of him. It was not a very exciting neck. Milo grew fidgety. His nose began to itch, but he found he couldn't scratch it. He couldn't twiddle his thumbs either, or tap out a rhythm on his chair. Perfect people obviously didn't do that sort of thing. As the minutes dragged by, Milo began wondering what they did do. The answer seemed to be nothing. Milo had never been so bored in his entire life. He felt as though years were going by. He began to wonder if perfection was all it cracked up to be. Suddenly the light grew dim. Milo felt himself falling, tumbled from his chair. The perfect people disappeared. The bedroom returned to normal. His watch showed 9:30. It was light out. Milo felt sick. He had not made it to perfection after all. He had only fallen asleep. He had failed.